All right, so I figured I'd just do a quick unboxing video. I just got a Monster Mill, the 3-roller Monster Mill, and I know buying a grain mill for the homebrew setup is definitely an expense, and it's something that everybody's going to go through at some point. Really, what it comes down to is it allows you to store grain uncrushed, which has a much longer shelf life, and then you can crush it to your specifications on demand. Don't have to worry about homebrew mills and them being open and the whole deal. So I'm just going to give this an unboxing. We're going to assemble it and just give you guys my first impressions as to what I think about this, and then we'll probably throw in some clips at the end of, you know, our first little passes through it and sort of see how that whole thing works. But yeah, let's just get to it. Give this guy a quick open. The big box that it came in was kind of suspect condition, so we'll see how this is. This would be hysterical if the whole thing's just destroyed in here, but you know, this inner box seemed to be in good condition. So let's see here. It's going to come in multiple parts, right? So you've got assorted. This is real heavy gauge stainless steel or aluminum. I'm not even sure. I had a mill before this. I don't even remember what it was called. It wasn't like the barley crusher or anything like that. It was just like the cheapest roller mill that I could find off of Amazon. And the drive shafter on that mill bent on me. And now it's in jeopardy of burning out my drill. So it was like I just got to bite the bullet and purchase one of these. I think it'll run you like, oh, look at that. This comes in a couple pieces. It's just rubber banded together because the actual mill itself will hold it. But there are your rollers. Holy crap, those are heavy duty, and probably twice the diameter. Let's give you a shot of that. Probably twice the diameter of this is easily twice the diameter of my old mill, and the teeth are a lot like larger, I should say. Like they're just a lot spikier just by the feel of it. It just feels like good quality. We'll see if you can get an overhead shot of that. And obviously it's a little bit off kilter right now because I was screwing around with it. But what happens is as you build the thing around it, it holds the whole deal together. So we'll just set that aside for now. And sometimes, like the mill that I got, I know this was the case, the cheap one, is that there'll be some protective coating on the outside because the metal is just so flimsy, and this doesn't have any of that protective coating. This is just good heavy duty, pretty thick gauge metal. I got the smaller hopper. You can get a hopper extension on this to be able to, I don't even remember what the specs were. Maybe it'll say in here. But again, this is just pieces of metal. They really do seem like good quality, good thick gauge. Just night and day difference from my last mill for sure. You got your hardware, individually packaged, right? A lot more pieces as well compared to the last mill that I put together. The last mill I put together literally just had 4 little sheets of metal, little triangle sheets of metal that you just bolted in together, and it was even missing screws right off the bat. Like I was fastidious about making sure that I didn't lose anything, and it was missing 2 screws, like right out of the box. So I should have known. It's one of those things where it's like, it's really, quality is going to come through, and Monster Mill is up there with like the higher end before you get crazy with mills that have motors and stuff like that. There's another bag of hardware. The Monster Mill is up there with quality being a higher end. It's a little bit more expensive than the barley crusher and stuff, but just my initial reaction, the build quality on this is exceptional. So this is the sort of particle board stand that it will come with. And I think you can buy on their website, like just the mill part, like just the 3-roller piece of it. And if you wanted to build your own, like, you know, hopper or whatever you want to do, and you just need the rollers, I think you have the option of doing that. We'll see how this works. If this doesn't work out too well, although I do like how thick and sturdy this is, if this doesn't work out very well, then I'll just take a 2x4 and make a little stand so it'll fit over a bucket, but I like the look of that already. And then you got a pretty crude set of directions here. Not crude, I guess. Crude's not a good word. Simple directions. You got your picture of your hopper installation, and then written directions, how to adjust your roller gap. And it gives you a diagram. I know people on like Reddit and stuff were asking questions about which rollers turn which direction. There's a diagram down here of which one, how you're setting larger versus smaller gaps in the 3-roller system. So yeah, I'll give this a read through and then we'll see how this goes. And for those who are like keeping score, this is the MM3. If you look at the top, there's all their models are sort of, sort of catch-all in this one set of directions. I got the MM3. I guess they have an MM3 Pro. Maybe that's the bigger hopper. I'm not entirely sure, but they definitely make a monster mill 2-roller. I went with a 3-roller because I didn't want to buy another mill ever, and this should last me my entire homebrewing career. But anyway, all right, let's just take a quick glance through these and then put this dude together. So we're assembling the mill, and what we're looking at is it upside down essentially. So that middle roller it's like we're in the bucket looking up at the mill. I'm first attaching the base so that the rollers are centered evenly, because if it's not sticking straight up and down, it'll be off kilter and you can bend a drive shaft or something like that. What's interesting is that there's supposed to be 4 little like almost like pieces of all thread that hold it in place, and then 4 bolts, and there were only 3 pieces of those little metal sticks, if you will, and then the rest of it was bolted together with the 4 bolts. But it should be fine. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's sort of odd that there was only 3 of them. Now we're going to put together the hopper and then attach it to that assembly that you saw in the first place. So there's 2 different kinds of hardware. You have these little screws that attach each of the pieces of metal together, and then there are these big screws that attach the whole hopper to the mill itself. So these are the sideboards. I don't know, there's no technical terminology for any of this, so we're just gonna roll with it. But you basically have to make 2 of these rectangular pieces as like the sideboards to start, and then the triangular hopper pieces attached to that. So I'm just making these 2 sideboards to start. You get your little bendy piece and you attach it to your rectangular piece. Pretty straightforward. It's just a lock nut and a little screw, or bolt. I keep saying screw, they're technically bolts, I think, and a washer. So just repeat that, tighten her up, just like that. And then generally what I like to do is just put everything on finger tight. This is important, especially when you're putting the mill together, so that you have a little bit of give and you can get the mill seated properly when you're putting the pieces together. So I'm just putting these together finger tight to start with. So now we get the 2 hopper pieces and put them on your rectangular sideboards. Again, this is all just there's just a ton of the same size bolt and nut and lock nut and washer. They actually give you 1 extra just in case you screw up and your dog eats it or something like that. But it's pretty easy. It's just, throw on some music and crank through it. We're just now attaching the final sideboard to the 2 hopper pieces. Again, making sure everything's just finger tight first, so that there's enough give where it's easy to get all the screws in. If you were to tighten it way down right off the bat, you're going to be like, in danger of bending the sheet metal to try to force it into place. And then what I do is I'll tighten 2 sides, and then I'll flip it around and tighten the other 2, so they're sort of even pull. Then I went to the top, so it's sort of anchored, and then the middle screws.
It's kind of like putting on a tire or something like that. Then these last pieces, which when the mill's in action, work really well. They're like little guide pieces to make sure that the grain slides smoothly into the rollers. I thought I wasn't sure like how necessary they were going to be, but watching the grain flow in there the first time I used the mill, definitely a good idea to have those installed. Somebody knew what they were talking about. To attach it, you got to take off these thumb screws, and then it slides in there. You don't really get a good shot of this here, but just take those thumb screws out, slide it over the thumb screws, put the thumb screws back in, and then take those 4 bigger bolts that you have and fasten the hopper to the mill.
That's it. We've got ourselves a monster mill. 3-roller mill, fully assembled. Let me explain what I just did. So we'll see if this works. But I did a crush, actually triple crush with just a pound of base malt in order to clean the rollers. When you put your fingers on these, when we first got this, there was like little flecks of metal that would come off just from like manufacturing and whatnot. So what you're supposed to do, and it says in the directions, is run like a pound of grain a couple times through the rollers to clean them off. And that's what we did. But I also noticed that the crush in here, and this is a little bit finer than it was the first time, because again, I ran it through multiple times. I want it to be a little bit finer than that, because with my brew in a bag system, I basically can't go too fine on my crush because it's impossible for me to get a stuck mash. If you're not doing a brew in a bag, if you're doing a traditional mash tun where you're trying to run wort off through the grain bed and let it filter through, I wouldn't go super fine, but I can go really fine. So I want to make the crush as fine as I can get it. I don't have a feeler gauge, whatever the heck they're talking about in there. So this is just a card, like you could use a credit card. This is an old student ID. And what you're supposed to do is, this is the mill's upside down, right? So come in a little bit so I can show you. There's these thumb screws that hold the roller adjustment in place, right? So when you tighten these thumb screws down, you can't twist these. It's not gonna loosen and adjust your gap setting. So what you need to do is you need to loosen these thumb screws so that you can adjust your gap. And this is a 3-roller mill. So the gap, if you look on the top, what you're adjusting is this roller here. See how there's 3 rollers? What you're adjusting is this roller here. This is the roller that gets driven by the drill. So what you're doing is you're moving this roller either this way, away from the driving roller to make the gap bigger, or you're moving it that way towards the driving roller to make the gap smaller. So we wanted to move it towards the driving roller in order to get a finer crush. So what I did was you loosen those thumb screws up, and then I shoved this ID card in the gap on one side and tightened it down, and then I went to the other side and shoved it in the gap and tightened it down so I know it's relatively even on both sides. And then we tighten the thumb screws to lock it in place, and we should get a finer crush now as a result. All that instruction is written in here. My impression after rolling this mill through for the first time is it is awesome. I mean, just really heavy duty. It just grinds through, no problem, no weird. There's a little bit of a wobble, but it's not bad at all. So we're just gonna roll this through and see if it makes it a little bit finer. Make sure, again, this is not gonna be an accurate representation of what the crush is looking like, but it'll give us something to work with. It's bad for your lungs, kid. Whoa, it's definitely a lot finer. Oh yeah. Check this out. That's way finer. That's the crush we're looking for. Not the crush we want, the crush we need right here. Look at all that. It's like freaking flour. That's what you're looking for. Perfect. I'm happy with that. Awesome. We'll probably brew a beer at some point. I might do a night brew. You never know. I'm getting kind of frothed up about this. So we'll see. But until next time, this was my first impressions with the Monster Mill 3 roller. I'll give you guys some updates later on down the road after I've used it a bunch if something falls apart or I like or don't like something about it. But for now, I'm super impressed. It seems like it's all it was cracked up to be as far as a super high quality homebrew mill. So yeah, happy to put this thing in action, and I'll keep you guys posted. See you in the next one.
You should tell them to like and subscribe.
I don't do that.